The time is 12 noon. I wish to welcome you to the Superintendent's Workshop being held in the Joe N. Idolette Junior TEC. I ask that out of respect to everyone, please silence all electronic devices. And if you have any material you wish to share with any board member, please give that to Ms. Milliman, who's over here. We will take a break every 2 hours if needed. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to the superintendent for the purpose of the workshop.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The purpose of the workshop is to present items that will eventually come to the board during a business meeting for approval. The first item on the agenda is the update of policies, and I believe the first office to present is the Office of Superintendent. So, Dr. Jacobs, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Through the chair, I will start with the revisions under the superintendent's office. We will start with policy 0100, definitions. In this policy, the revisions are primarily revisions to definitions. You can see that agreement is found later on in the collective bargaining agreement, and also eligible student has been added to this particular policy.
The next policy is 0131, legislative policymaking. This is a statutory update based on Florida Rule 120.81, and it is the exceptions and special requirements in general areas.
The next policy is 0131.1, technical corrections. This refers to updating the names of individuals who serve as district compliance officers, that we can do that as long as the title of those compliance officers remains the same. Also indicating that we can make those as long as they're of a non-substantive nature. I know there was a question regarding technical versus non-substantive, and we have consulted with Ms. Enval. We have technical corrections defined in our board policies. However, there is no universal definition at this point for substantive changes. So we will defer to technical corrections as being non-substantive. The next policy is 0164, copy of notice of regular meetings, hearings, and workshops. This provides information on how we can advertise these various meetings held by the board. Also, you'll see in this particular policy that the bylaw 0131 has been inserted as a reference.
Can I ask a question about that one?
Sure.
How have we been noticing?
So we've been noticing through the newspaper, we've been noticing through an email that goes out to all those who wish to receive notice of it, and we also have it posted on our board docs website.
And so according to the law change, then we only need to put it on our website, correct?
Correct.
Okay, are we doing that to save money?
Not as of yet, because this policy has not been approved.
Okay, so when it's approved, we're going to move to that?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
May I add? Can I, when we get to that stage and when we're ready to post things on the website, can we make it visible rather than hide it somewhere underneath click, 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 click? Can we put it in a place that is easily accessible if someone does a word search? Because I know many people have had issues with word searches. You put a word in the search, it doesn't come up. But if we could do something along the lines of making sure that, you know, obviously anything that is coming before the board that needs approval in this manner would be easily searched and easily accessible.
We certainly can do that. We'll get with the team and see how we might best do that.
Okay, and then also in the language, can we put something on there wherever it is? I don't know how to do it on the web, because on the web page, of course, we can tailor it. I'm assuming we can tailor it anyway for us, for our usage. Can we also say there, you know, if you have questions or concerns or want to provide feedback to the board, please click this link, fill this information, you know, this form out, whatever it is there that we can do, because obviously how they see it in a newspaper would be different by how they receive it on a website. Thank you. I'm sorry, and I thought I saw Dr. Moore wanting to say something.
No, I was just going to say we're shifting the company
When is that shift going to happen? Do we know? July. But this is going to go into, this is coming to us, this,
July.
these changes also in July.
Yes.
So we'll be able to do all of them together? Okay.
The next policy is Policy 0165, School Board Meetings. There are a variety of changes here, just to clarify exactly the difference between regular meetings, special meetings, and emergency meetings. There's been a lot of discussion around this, but we are hopeful that we have captured all of the changes that needed to be made to clean up this particular revision. The next policy is 0165.1, agendas. And again, you can see the language in there for regular meetings, also an emergency meeting, just to align it with the previous policy. The next policy is executive session. We no longer need this policy, so we're recommending rescission of this policy as this information is captured in previous policies.
The next policy is 2340, field and other. We are changing it to school-sponsored field trips. There were 2 rules released last school year, and we are updating the policy to make sure we are in line with those rules. They are school-sponsored events and activities, and field trips, extracurricular activities, and other supplemental programs and activities. All updated language is directly from those 2 rules. And then policy 5780 is student parent rights. We did a crosswalk again to align to and with statute. Some of our numbering based on the new iterations of the Parents' Bill of Rights did not align. Now your policy aligns directly with statute, so that if a parent is looking up, for example, letter M, your letter M in policy aligns to the Parents' Bill of Rights now, moving forward.
Ms. Rosario?
Yeah, so I have some concerns with some of the items that were removed under health issues. We've talked about this, and the question that was asked, or I think the concern was that you all couldn't find where that support is in statute, assuming that it had been removed. I'm going to come down to A, health issues A. It was stricken here, but that is actually found in 1014.06, Section 1 and Section 2. Should I just go through it and then?
Sure.
And then we can. B is captured in the analysis. House Bill 1557 analysis. C is also captured in the analysis. D is in 1014.05, Section F3. Medical treatment without parental consent is captured in 1014.06. And in 743.064, I know I'm going through all these numbers, but I'll be able to, I don't mind sharing them. The bottom section under school district compliance with parental consent for healthcare services, that first paragraph is captured in 1002.203D1. And I think that is all that I have for that section. So I went into each one of those sections, and of course I printed them and tabbed them. I'd be happy to hand them over. I just want us to be sure that we are not removing from here anything that is prevalent to student and parental rights. Now, let me just say, I know that we have other policies that may capture some of these things, which is fine, But as far as their rights are concerned, we want to be able to tell them in this one, which was the original intent of this policy, which was to make sure that you say, you have this medical right to blah, blah, blah. For more medical policy information, please see policy XYZ. That to me is very succinct. I just don't want us to eliminate something that we are required to make sure that we tell our students. So these changes here, what was recommended are internal, meaning what is being stricken is not based on any statutory rule or change in the law. It's just something, what I was told is that it was an internal request to remove these items. I would prefer to keep the language that we had before. If you want to, change, if you want to clean it up a little bit, that's fine, but I don't want us to remove anything that we are required to maintain within the policy here, specifically in this section, especially in this climate today.
Ms. Berenborg?
Yes, go ahead.
Just a question. I know talked about immediate notification for the reading and math deficiencies.
Wait,
And-
I'm
oh,
sorry.
I'm sorry. You
We're
were finished?
still, yeah, we're still on parental rights.
Yeah, student
Are
parent
you on
right.
that?
Yeah,
She is.
57.
Oh, okay, I
Yeah.
apologize.
With our real-time data and information that we can give to parents, how do we do that, Dr. Shafty or Ms. Baser? You see that? It says immediate, it says it's practical. How do we do that?
Good afternoon. Through the chair, we have a letter that goes home to the parents. The best case scenario is that letter is explained and gone through with the parent during parent conferences. But in the event that those conferences do not happen, the letter goes home to parents.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, okay.
Madam Chair.
Oh,
If I would like to, members, your comments are spot on. I went through with staff, we went through there's 17 policies that have specific components of requiring parental consent. And in our health services policies specifically, there are, let's see, 10 that specifically relate to those health services. And they are cross-referenced in the parental rights policy, but the language that was there was not exact. That is already in our policies that are captured. And so the language that captures all of that information is the Notice of Healthcare Services, which is, it's in subsection A. If you scroll down a little bit more, it says, keep going. There it is. It specifically says that we have to provide notice to parents, and then we have to give them the option to withhold consent or decline any specific service. And all of that information, that's more of a succinct version,
Yeah.
and you'll see there's crosswalks. See, there's a crosswalk there to policy 5320, which is immunization, 5112, which is interest requirements. There's a whole bunch of policy references in the policy itself. We just didn't want to be duplicative of what the other policy says, because they're a little bit more specific, but it covers all instances of emergency authorization and if we do epinephrine use and immunizations, use of medications, it's all in all of our other policies, and they're all kind of put in parentheses there. There's 5330.01, which is self-administered medication and epinephrine use. It's all there. So we wanted to make sure we weren't recreating the wheel, but also have those references in the policy itself so that parents understood that they're there. I didn't want to take out any of that reference, especially the Notice of Healthcare Services, because they need to understand that they have the option to withhold that consent, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does make sense, and sure, we have to make sure that they understand that they have the right to be notified. But what I'm suggesting is out of the bare minimum, section A, which is up above a little bit more, under the title Health Issues, and then the subtitle Parental Consent for Healthcare Services for Medical Treatment in Schools. Down more. Right there, A. That at a bare minimum, we are capturing the language that says, these are your rights. This is your right to. And that's not there. what we're doing by eliminating these is that we're not saying you have this right to. Sure, in practice, you can, we have to provide you with consent, the option to consent. But we're not capturing the language that says this is your right to blah, blah, blah. So I'd like us to make sure that we have that in there at a bare minimum. Does that kind of make sense?
If you could scroll down to that, the section A, which is under that, right there. So it would go right to notice of healthcare services. Are you saying you wanted to add a sentence like there?
We can add it, yeah, we can add it anywhere in there. I just want us to make sure that it doesn't have to be in that particular, I just want us to be able to capture what their right is. Not how we're going to handle it, but they have the right to.
It says it right there.
Where?
On A, at the beginning of the school year, the district will provide notice to parents.
That's not the same thing. What we are doing,
The schools, hold
Whoop, whoop,
on,
whoop.
you're moving
Go
it.
back. Stop there.
It says, at the beginning of the school year, the district will provide notice to parents of all healthcare services offered at their student's school and of the option to withhold consent or decline any specific service.
that's not the same.
How is that not the same to be able to know?
Because that's what we are doing as a school district, but parents have the right to be informed and to give consent, and there's more in this, that's why.
But isn't that in
And
another
propose
location?
medical,
That's in another policy, correct? Isn't that in the,
We have a number of policies,
Right.
and
We
in
have a
each
number,
one of
she
the
just
ones,
said it.
I have all 17 that I listed, I could read them all to you, but each one, I went through each one and made sure it requires the parent to provide that consent. And
Okay.
sometimes it's prior to, and part of the one about the emergencies is they have to fill out the emergency authorization form. And so if it's an emergency, we're going to go ahead and act. If we can't get a hold of the parents, we're going to go ahead and act so we, protect our students the best as possible. The only thing I can think of if under A, instead of the option to withhold, the right to withhold, I mean, if that's really, if you're looking for the word the right.
if we could
Two.
do right and option, I mean, that's fine too. I'd be okay with that, I just want us to, I want to protect the district in the, how can I say, from the viewpoint from this community that would assume, well, you're striking all these things out and you're not in favor of parental rights, medical rights. I want to avoid that. So sure, I'd be happy with that as well.
Chair,
Mr. Dyer.
yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Dyer.
you can put it in caps too. That's the legal way to shout something.
Yeah.
You want?
At the very beginning.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, if we could just, go back to the table before, I mean, we have a little bit of time before it comes back to us.
I don't think we've advertised this one yet. So you're saying maybe in subsection A, sorry, through the chair. Subsection A, notice of healthcare services, at the beginning of the school year, you could say the option of the right and option to withhold consent. Would
I'd
that
be
help?
okay with that.
Is the rest of the board okay with that?
It's fine, bold letters or
Sure
whatever.
with that? Yeah.
Thank you. Good suggestion, Mr. Dyer.
All right, anybody else? Okay.
Through the chair, policy 8531 is free and reduced price meals. In this policy, the revisions are primarily to clarify the language that's included in this policy, as well as to delineate that not only are we subject to the Child Nutrition Program and National School Lunch Act, but any other applicable federal or Florida policies. And
Yes,
then,
Dr. Jones.
Are you finished with that one, honey?
Yes.
Oh, I just want to say thank you to Dr. Moore and whoever's doing the webpage, because I talked about this last week with Bob Seuss. All the options our students have for summer meals and going to different nonprofits and the times, and that's just wonderful. Thank you.
Policy 9140, advisory committees. In this policy, you'll see that there has been a revision from citizens advisory committees to advisory committees. This ensures that all stakeholders that could be named to an advisory committee, if their primary role is, for example, a staff member, as opposed to representing themselves as a citizen, would be included under this particular policy. Also, there is the provision for individuals to join the committee meetings through video conferencing, and that any committee, advisory committees that are established cannot interfere with school advisory council work.
Okay.
And that's all the policies for the Office of the Superintendent. The next office is Ms. Crisafulli with the Office of School Leadership and Management.
Good afternoon, through the chair. The first policy is 2411. This is on guidance and counseling. These are the addition of 2 new legal references. Any questions on that? The next policy is 2460. This was the added changes to the Rule 6A related to information and instruction that has to be provided to a student and the student's parent prior to the student turning 18. The next policy is 5200, attendance. Thank you all for input. This is to align our policy with the changes to our code of conduct and to add clarifying language for to the code of conduct for parents, but it also is changing some of the excused to unexcused.
Can I
Sure,
bring up?
absolutely.
So I just want to say for the record, I did bring up the bill that just recently passed. Governor signed it, so it's now law that's going to be taking place in July. So we're aligned with that law about absences, correct?
Yes, I checked with Ms.
Okay,
Holden.
You checked. Thank you.
Ms. Crisafulli or Dr. Moore, do you know what our attendance rate was for elementary, middle, and high school this year, just on average? I know, it's off the cuff.
Elementary runs around 92 to 93, but I can send that
That's right.
information to the board.
Middle and high?
Drop a percentage point for each grade level as you.
I just, whatever we can do on attendance, we need to do. Thank you.
Okay, the next policy through the chair is 5330. This is the use of medications. This was updating the current Neola policy to align with parental rights and any invasive health medical treatments, opting in that there must be parental permission to do anything at the school relating to medication. Then 5340 is student accidents and illness. This only change was taking it from health assistants to school nurse. We have changed our title. Yes?
Yes.
Go ahead.
You can finish the thought. I had a question about the medicine,
Sure.
the medications. I don't want to interrupt.
No, that one was really short, so you can go back.
I just read somewhere, I'm going to go back to that one. This is the use of medications. I just read somewhere, and it was on my way here, so I cannot recall where I read it, but it had to be either in policy or in a recommended rule. It might have been one of the statutes that were just signed by the, one of the bills that were just signed by the governor about the use and the ability of students to take Tylenol on their own. Was that from you?
Our parents, our students and parents' rights.
That's probably where I saw it.
Can I ask a clarifying question about that? Where does that Tylenol have to exist? On the child or in the nurse's room?
Let me check. I don't want to misspeak.
Because we could get,
I
we could have
believe
some
the
issues.
child, because the exact language is a student may possess and use a medication to relieve headaches while on school property or at a school-sponsored event or activity without a physician's note or prescription if the medication is regulated by the United States Food and Drug Administration for over-the-counter use to treat headaches.
But it doesn't say where it has to be.
Possess.
Possess. So I can see where we can get into an issue where a child gives it to another child. Yeah, do we have anything in our policy about that?
So, Ms. Berenborg, through the chair, in this 5330 update, there is language that states before any non-prescribed medication or treatment may be administered, the board shall require prior written consent of the parent, along with a waiver of any liability of the district for the administration of the medication. Medication shall not be carried on a student's person in the school except as approved by the principal, meaning they would have to have the parent and the waiver signed prior to that.
Even
And
Tylenol?
It just has non-prescribed
So
medication.
if a child wants to bring Tylenol to school, then they have to make sure that the principal knows they have it, and that the
Has to
parent
be a
has
waiver.
written. Okay,
And then there's further language that says no student is allowed to provide or sell any type of over-the-counter medication to another student, and violations will be considered a violation of the policy and
how
code of
are you
conduct.
going to make sure parents really understand that? Because let's say they just decide to give their child Tylenol because they're not feeling good that day. How are we going to make sure parents really understand that that's a violation to do it that way instead of a written note to the teacher for the principal?
So I will confer with Ms. Holden, but I believe we may be able to, oh, yes, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Could we somehow make sure that's a priority in communicating that?
Absolutely.
Because that's a big change, I think, for parents. And to make sure that they understand that they can give their child Tylenol, it's just, this is what I have to do to it.
Right.
And if my child gives it to somebody else, they're responsible.
Correct.
They need to know that part too. What are the, just curious, what would happen if a child did that and they got caught doing that? What would the punishment be?
Well, I would say that would depend on the situation, but we would follow the language in the code of conduct. It might be a
Right.
different situation,
Okay.
you know.
So I think parents need to really understand what that is, because I'd hate for somebody to get caught into that. And just because a child says another child has a headache, oh, I have Tylenol, here you go. I don't want that little innocent, here you go, to become a huge blown-up thing. So parents really need to understand this. My concern is that it just needs to be communicated well. Okay. Yes, Ms. Rosario?
Yeah, I can see how that could be an issue where if a child were to do that, then the child is called into the office and lo and behold, there's a consequence when this information wasn't initially provided as, hey, you just can't do this, make sure you don't do this. The other thing that I was going to say is there seems to be a little bit of a conflict. So I'm okay with having this in policy, but what I believe you read a line there. Where is that line that you read? I'm sorry.
Hold on one second. You go back to it. To my next policy.
What part of turn off all electronic devices did you hear? Board attorney.
So it is.
That wasn't under that policy that you read it.
It's under policy 5330, and it's under approval and use section, right before the storage section. Yes, right there.
Okay, I'm there.
So I basically read that whole paragraph.
Which policy number?
5330.
All right.
Okay, the board shall require as follows: a written prescription for the child's physician, okay. But that's not what Dr. Shafty read. Dr. Shafty read that a child has the right to bring it in and carry it on their person without, this is a non-prescribed item. And then B, a written statement from the parent which grants to the principal permission to assist in the administration of such medication. Again, that such medication would be the prescription, not the non-prescription.
The paragraph that I read pertains to non-prescribed medication, and this is an update to this policy.
All right, and here it says, before any non-prescribed medication or treatment may be administered, the board shall require the prior written consent of the parent along with the waiver. Medication shall not be carried on the student's person in the school except as approved by the principal. I think that's the sentence there that causes me concern because that sounds like it conflicts with what Shafty read, what Dr. Shafty read. Can you read yours again? Oh, a student may possess and use a medication to relieve headaches while on school property. May possess. if this medication is regulated by the United, okay, so may possess, and yet our policy says that medication shall not be carried on a student's person, but the law says that they may. Yeah, but that's not what the law says.
It says
I
that they
think
have to
that
have a
we
written
should-
permission to the principal, though. So
Yeah, but
approved by the
that's not what-
principal would be,
Wait, say that again?
doesn't the law say that they have to give a written permission to the principal?
Wait, go back to that.
I don't think they're in disagreement with one another.
No,
Because we're saying they may do it, but
No, that's
basically
not.
they
It doesn't
require
say
the
that.
principal's written approval.
doesn't say anything about a principal. This just says that a student may possess and use.
Right,
It doesn't say
hard time
anything
with the
about a
principal not knowing
principal
about it.
permission.
right. No, I see what you're saying, but in the other policy, it's still an agreement in that the may is that you have to have permission from the principal. It's not just people taking in whatever they want. It could be worded in a more,
I just think that we need to, just that one line in there that says medication shall not be carried. It's just that one sentence.
Absolutely.
Which
Somehow
sentence-
or another, I just want to be careful that the law says that they can carry it and our policy says they can't.
Correct. We will align.
That's a conflict.
This is to relieve headaches, specifically
it
for
doesn't-
headaches. But the other one, if you don't mind, is prescribed medication or treatment.
No, it's under non-prescribed. The other one for Ms. Krista Foley is under non-prescribed. She's saying yes.
I don't see it at all. I don't know what you're referring to on here. Which line are we looking at?
The sentence that reads, medication shall not be carried on a student's person in the school except as approved by the principal.
Could we
That's not
tell
what
us
this-
where in the policy that's located, what page, where on the page?
No, down. Second sentence from the end of that paragraph. So all I'm saying is that one sentence.
Through
one
the
is
chair.
saying that we,
It might be a semantics of over-the-counter versus non-prescribed. So if we could check on that and get back with you, because I think it's a semantics.
yeah,
It might be a
if
semantics.
we said prescribed medication shall not be, totally okay with that.
Can
So
can I?
if we can just delineate between those, just to be sure, whether it's, I just don't want us to get into a situation, I know, I see Ms. Enville's head shaking yes.
Yeah,
so-
Ms.
so
Enville.
I'm accepting that as yes, we will look into it. Thank you,
Can you,
appreciate
can
it.
you make sure that it's really, really clear? Because I'm worried about opening that up to anybody can bring anything without the principal's knowledge. I think we need to follow what the law says, and it says that you have to give a written note to the principal that they're going to be using this or carrying it.
And I do, if I may, Madam Chair, I'm looking for, we're working on the consent, the parent acknowledgement forms right now, and we have the consent for school health services, and it specifically says, it has, let me read it. Separate parent legal guardian authorizations will be required for the school nurse or school staff to administer daily or as needed prescribed or over-the-counter medications. And so I do think we have to delineate between the two and make sure, because you could have a prescription to take extra strength Tylenol, right? But, or maybe more. So I guess, yeah, we're going to have to look at that, and we'll see if we can delineate and make sure it's clear between the two.
Thank you.
Mr. Dyer?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, I kind of get where some of this is coming from. If you don't control everything, you control nothing. And there's so many things where you think you're taking one thing and you're actually taking another. And so I don't really have a problem whether it's prescription or non-prescription, making sure that the principal or somebody in the school knows what's going on, because I just think that that gives you a level of control. I mean, basically, what this policy does, if something does happen, we can say that there's a policy that says that it shouldn't have happened, or this is the way it did happen, and you were in violation of the policy. So it's...
My concern is if the principal doesn't know and a student takes something and let's say there's an overdose or a situation where 911's called, and they ask, what has the student taken, and nobody knows, that's dangerous.
Whether
So
it's a
we
Tylenol.
have to know what the students are taking.
Well,
Yes.
I don't disagree.
Dr. Jones?
Whatever this ends up as far as our detail and wording, we just have to make sure we get the communication to parents. I'm thinking as a high school principal, 2,000 students, for non-prescribed, like Tylenol. You could have 200 kids have notes for that from parents. You know, the prescription medicine we've always had where they give it to the nurse, they come in and take it at certain times, and that seems to work very well. But those non-prescribed over-the-counter, as far as Aleve or Tylenol or something, you have got to get that communication out there, because I would bet there are many, many students, especially at a high school, that would have that just in their purse for maybe a headache or something. Dr. Posca, what did you say earlier? I didn't pick up on it.
I was just commenting on the policy and the law that they may not actually be in non-compliance with one another, just based on the wording of it. But I would recommend that we do maintain some sort of oversight over what kids are bringing in, what that is non-prescribed or over-the-counter, regardless of that, the same definition. But because, I mean, Tylenol is one of the most common drugs that kill people. So, you know, it's people overdose on it. They don't realize they're overdosing on it. People have allergies to these things. NSAIDs also cause liver failure if you take too much ibuprofen, Aleve, and naproxen. And there's a lot of inappropriate situations to take those NSAIDs. If you're exercising out in the heat, if you have asthma, there's other issues of bleeding disorders. So, I mean, at the end of the day, we do want to know what's going on. And we definitely don't want kids handing other kids meds without parents knowing. That's the biggest thing.
Right, just making sure parents are aware, so they start in that school year knowing this is what I have to do.
Mr. Rosario?
Yeah, I don't disagree. I immediately heard one thing here, and then I heard another thing in our policy. I heard one thing in the law, and I heard another thing in our policy. They just didn't align. And so I think we just need to align them. I do agree that the principals and the school nurse should know all of the medications that are in possession of our students.
Did it too.
Should I call him out?
You got to get a whip. Get a whip. The hammer's
I
not
got to
doing
take
it.
a call.
You need a whip, not a hammer.
It's okay.
You should have put it in caps.
How do I do that? Air quotes?
It happens, it happens. So yeah, I just think that they need to align if it's prescription. I even have a suggestion, which is take that one paragraph, put it in here, and then say, however, school building principals are expected to receive notice of what over-the-counter medicine. So, you know, something to that effect could make it simple. That one sentence, though, does need to be specific, whether it's prescription or non-prescription. You know, this is the issue with the law, right? The law is so general. You know, how granular can we be? Because I would worry about things like NyQuil. You know, NyQuil can cause, you know, people to be very loopy. And Dr. Posca knows a whole bunch of other, you know, over-the-counter medicines that, I mean, even Dramamine.
I mean, Mucinex is a commonly abused one now. You get to a toxic dose and it causes you to feel high.
Mucinex, what?
But in general, I think the main thing is we want the kids not sharing meds, and we want to know
Correct.
what kids have, what meds, and it's not just the Wild West. And at the end of the day, the parent needs to be informed, because this goes back to the parental rights issue. Kids can't just bring in whatever meds they want and be taking them under our authority without the parents agreeing to that, because these medications are dangerous, even if they're over the counter.
Good.
Yeah, I want to stress again that not only do we need to communicate that to parents, but we need to communicate it to students at the beginning of the year, not to share stuff even like Tylenol.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, 8405, school safety and security, just adds to the list of input from representatives, including our security guards, teachers and staff, parents, and students. 8406 is really about Fortify, reports of suspicious activity and potential threats. As you can see, this is the policy that must state the specific security specialist's name, which would be Mr. Alberti. And then, as you know, we did update in the code of conduct the fortified language with discipline and for misled threat. And then 8407 is really just a technical change to the statute and capitalizing safe school officer. That would be the end of my policies.
Good afternoon through the chair. I have several policies to share with you. My first one is policy 2120. This is around school improvement. The changes in this policy are pretty technical and they don't change the meaning of the policy itself. It changes a substantial reading deficiency to a substantial deficiency in reading, and the same for math. And that particular change will show up in about 3 other policies of mine. It also does add the VPK students with a substantial deficiency in early literacy skills paragraph. My next policy is 2125. This is around school advisory councils. It's added language that goes through the explanation of the powers and functions of the school advisory council. It adds a provision for permitting virtual meetings or members attending virtually. It modifies it shows what the modifications to the composition of the SAC committee are, and it also adds the requirement that bylaws be adopted, and finally it addresses a reference to Florida Sunshine Law.
Can I go back to that?
Yes, ma'am.
So previously, and I believe it's still there, that they have to, when they do the advance notice, that they also have to have the agenda that says what they're voting on, correct?
Correct.
Where are we putting that? Where are we placing that so that parents know and teachers know that they're voting on votes?
I believe when Dorian sends that out, the agenda is attached.
I have not seen the agendas. I only see where the meeting is and the time, but I don't see the agendas attached. Unless I missed them in the last couple months, but,
I'll verify that.
okay.
I don't think it's on the agenda.
Are we doing that on the schools' websites too, when we're advertising they have a SAC meeting? And they're putting on the SAC meeting time, date, and the agenda? That's been an issue. I'm going to tell you, that's been an issue, especially when it comes down to A-school money votes. So we are doing that, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I know. So you got to make sure we do that. Okay.
Get that right. Thank you for that question. My next policy is 2421. This one is really revisions. It's a technical correction. It changes the Department of Economic Opportunity to the Department of Commerce. My next policy is 2423. This is really a major cleanup. This goes back to the Federal School to Work Opportunities Act of 1994, so it's been fairly outdated. It cleans up all of the language and references the current language regarding this policy. The next one is 2450. This is also more of a technical correction. It takes out Adult Education High School for Treasure Coast Technical College because that is not offered at that school. Our next policy is 2455. This policy, if you'll notice, the only change to this policy is essentially B, progress monitoring procedures. We had A and what is now C previously. What we did not have previously was B, and that was in this statute, so we went ahead and added that in. The next policy is 2520, and this is also a technical correction regarding the substantial deficiency in reading language. My next policy is 5410.01. This one is around promotion, acceleration, placement, and retention, and also addresses the substantial deficiency in reading and math. My next policy is 5460. This is around graduation requirements. This includes you'll remember hearing about this about a year ago. We did add this to our student progression plan then. This adds the Florida Seal of Fine Arts program qualifications to our board policy now. So we've already been doing this for the better part of the last year. My next policy is 5463. This is around accepting credits from other schools. And you'll notice this is also pretty big cleanup language. This now aligns with the state language and addresses the transfer of credits. And my last policy is 5465, and this is around the GED test. There is a minor update that requires a parent or student or a legal guardian of a student 16 and 17 to submit documentation to FLDOE prior to signing up for one of the subtests of the GED.
Yes.
Just going back to the credits from other schools, Ms. Becerra,
Yes, ma'am.
you know, sometimes we have to really, really fight to get them, especially in high school, which is so important for graduation requirements. Have any idea how that is going, or if we don't get the credit, how do we handle it?
So the way the language reads is we take it at face value, and that could mean a million different things, but it's essentially, if it's coming through a non-accredited system, we take it for the value that it's presented to us, and then they have one marking period so if they come in and they say they are an A student in high school, that stands until the end of that marking period, and they will have had to have a 2.0 or higher for that to continue. Otherwise, there will be some need to retake coursework.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next section is Office of Financial and Business Services. The first three items there, the first three policies are around drug-free workplace. We currently have a policy. Neola has expanded on the definitions of testing during application, fit for duty, reasonable suspicion, and follow-up testing after a positive test. These all help with our workers' compensation reimbursement. That's policy 1124, 3124, and 4124 all have similar changes in them. The next policy has three with it: anti-harassment, 1362, 3162, and 4162. However, all of the policies already have a general policy statement except for 1362. So this is taking the exact policy statement from the other two and placing it into 1362, language we currently have in our other policies. The next one is 3430.03. It's a technical change to align with statute. You get 4 days of sick leave at the end of your first month, but if you're instructional, the statute says on your first day of employment. We already follow this practice, but we're aligning the policy to align with statute. 4425 is nursing mothers. That's our current policy. We are striking that policy from the support staff section of 4425 and moving it with revisions to 8280 in the operations section. The current provisions for nursing mothers is in the Fair Labor Standard Act, and it was amended through the adoption of the Federal Pump Act. So this aligns with that and provides those provisions for nursing mothers on the campus for a 2-year period of time with the principal's knowledge and a space. The next two policies are simply statutory changes: 6234, use of discretionary allotted funds, and 7101, building permits and code enforcement, simply have a statutory citation change at the end. So we are aligning to those, adding those statutes. 7240, site acquisition, just add some specific language to ensure that when we're acquiring sites, they're not near airports, train stations, loud commercial buildings, that we follow the exemption from public record until the negotiation is complete, that we get a audit, an appraisal for anything between 100 and 500,000, and 2 appraisals for anything over 500,000, and that those things are not discussed in executive session. And the last policy is 8431, preparedness for toxic hazard and asbestos hazard. That changes the title from an assistant superintendent to our building official, and changes the agency to which we report to from the Florida Department of Health to the Department of Business and Professional Regulations. And those are all of my updates.
Thank you, team. So items B through C will be presented by Dr. Jacobs. I'm just going to run through E through F, Ms. Christofoli, G through L, Mr. Green, and then M through Q, Ms. Becerra. So we'll just run through.
All right, the next item, you'll see that the materials include a 2526 leather agreement with the Power Buying Group. This is essentially a request that comes on an annual basis to the school board, for which you all have been briefed on, for a blanket PO for over $50,000 for the purchase of food for our food and nutrition services for the 25-26 school year.
Okay.
The next item is C. It is the approval to renew Canvas, which is our LMS or learning management system. Each of the board members have been briefed on that.
That's not C, that's D.
Sorry.
The entitlement grants for C. Do we?
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and review entitlement grants. So,
Slow your roll.
so fast you didn't notice. All right, so C
Sorry, I
is
caught that.
entitlement grants that come to the board twice a year. This is a request for authorization to accept grant awards. During this time period, we are requesting to accept 13 grant awards, and the backup includes the amounts and the title of each funding award that we're requesting approval for.
Okay. Board members, we're good? Okay.
Take two, pretend like you didn't hear it. The next item is approval to renew Canvas, which is our learning management system. We briefed board members on this a couple months back, but we were able to negotiate and receive a lower quote, which is why the item is coming before you now. Question?
Through the chair, E is the review of the addendum to the AML healthcare. This was a request to increase it over $50,000, which needs to come to the board due to filling in for a year-long leave of absence, which would push it over the $50,000. Any questions? And then F is the approval of the Vero Beach High School golf team that was invited and is going to the Brophy Ping Invitational event in August. There are currently 5 golfers going. This is transportation's being provided. Everything's lined up, all the insurance is in, and chaperones.
And they're paying for it?
Yes.
Okay.
No cost to the district. Thank you.
Next item, item G, is the recurring critical district-wide expenditure requirements. So this list are vendors who the superintendent is requesting authority to spend over $50,000 per year. You'll notice vendors such as Flowers Bakery for our bread products and flour products in food service. I'll note some of the changes. The food and nutrition point of sale software, which is typically under $50,000 a year. With inflation and cost increase, that item has now bumped over $50,000. So that's all your point of sale software on the computers at an estimate of $60,000. Fingerprintings, you'll notice the Florida Department of Education is on there now. And as I briefed last year in our budget workshop, some of the impactors were moving to the new ACA fingerprinting system, which we are currently implementing. Lenovo has been added because that is where we are getting lower prices on our technology now. Fuel was upgraded by $500,000 for the anticipated increase in propane. And there is a new one this year, Cotton Disaster Recoveries is on there for $2 million. We anticipate that we will not spend any money with Cotton Disaster Recoveries, but we wanted to make sure we now have a piggyback bid in place. They were aligned last year, but if we had a disaster that was bigger than what our local vendors could handle, our local vendors responded phenomenally this year, and we were able to open school immediately on a Monday thanks to them. But if it was larger than that, then this is a national disaster recovery who guarantees us supplies, electrical trailers to supply bathrooms, classrooms, large-scale disaster recovery. The superintendent would have the authority under emergency purchasing anyway, but I think this is just a good thing to have in place to ensure that in the case of a natural disaster, we had something beyond our local vendors to help support that.
Ms. Rosario?
So question, with the expansion of some of our schools going to a K-8, in the event that some of those schools will have the middle school portion set up in portables, am I to understand that in the event of a natural disaster where some of those portables would be completely destroyed, this
Cotton disaster recovery, yes.
cotton disaster recovery would replace the entire portable and all of the contents within?
In Lee County, they actually set up an entire portable school from the gymnasium to the media center to the cafeteria. So they will help us through that transition.
Okay.
And then we would rebuild as necessary, but they would get us portable, functioning spaces for any type of facility that we have.
And not for anything additional, only for the,
There's no cost to this
Cost.
contract if we do not use it. It's only the bid pricing, and all of the districts in the consortium are using this as well, part of SCRAM. But there is no cost to it unless we use them.
thank you.
The next item, H, is a review of the annual fire safety, casualty, and sanitation. It used to be just the fire safety report, and then we added the casualty and sanitation along the way under the state requirement for educational facilities, or SREF, Chapter 5. So there's a 160-page report. We are required annually to inspect our schools against all of those codes. Mr. Copeman is our building official as well as our fire inspector. He and his team go out and do that, and I will tell you, for the first time that I have ever known, for as long as I have been here, every single one of these, it could be down to an extension cord, have been and were resolved before they come to you at the board meeting. So it's wonderful that we found them all, but it's quite another thing that the schools were able to get all of those things resolved prior to the board.
How many prop doors?
Only a few, and not all of them were resolved by the end.
Okay.
Well, some at the beginning.
Well, of course, they can be resolved, they just get shut.
I
But
know.
my point is, how many do we have that, employees are still not following policy?
Very few prop doors this year. And I don't know the exact number, but it was way lower than the year before. I think it was only at 2 schools, and that was in the initial report in October.
And you're
The door wedges.
really only going to capture that during the inspection.
Right.
Even if you ask that question, you're not really going to get an accurate number. But
Ms. Rosario?
The-
I'm sorry, Ms.
oh.
Chair Barrenborg.
Yes.
I just want to say, the fact that they got those corrected is amazing, because we used to get those where you have all these issues not corrected, and we
Right.
have to go on and on. So kudos to that team.
Thank you. The next item, through the chair, J, actually I, is the IT help desk ticket system. Again, this is now over $50,000. It's around $69,000. However, we adjusted that based on actual FTE, so the cost will most likely be lower than that, but we are asking for $70,000 of authority just to ensure that with fluctuations in student population, we average about 2,000 to 3,000 IT tickets a month. The next item, J, is a review of the employee laptop and monitor refresh. So this is just like you see laptops here, all of the employees have them. These are about $3,100 Lenovo laptops. They're convertibles, they have a pen, and we're getting them through a negotiated educational price of just over $700, about $732 per laptop. So that is an item for that refresh. Item K is approval of Microsoft. We've had Microsoft since 1999. This is through the educational pricing model. It's just under $400,000 a year for 3 years, and then there's 2 one-year optional. Just as a point of clarification for people watching, anyone who's an employee or a parent of a student in the system, everyone in the system, including the students, does have access to download 5 free versions of Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Excel, all of the functions on grandmother's computer where they do their homework, on their uncle's computer. They can download it on any 5 they want. as well as employees. So that's a benefit that comes with it. I wanted to make sure people knew about.
Are we putting that out there somehow?
We
So
do.
that,
We put it out in newsletters and Collaborator, and we do get frequent use
Parents
of that. The
Focus
students
page.
know that for sure.
On the Parents Focus page?
That's a good idea. We can start off the beginning of the year, adding it to the
Thank you.
Parent Focus page. And the last item is the review of the surplus property, and the surplus property for this time is a very minimal list. It does have some old projectors, an tire changing machine, and the one item is a Windstar van it's a 02 Ford van. Actually, it's an 01. It shows that it has a $2,900 value. However, that is a mistake. It has no value. That's something in our old terms green screen system that was initially put on that did not devaluate the value properly. But I do have a confirmation that there is no value to it. It's 23, 24 years old. The
So-
rest of them are some technology.
So two things on that. One, great, only one page and only 8 items. That's
Quarter of a page.
amazing. And the other thing is, what's the body of the van look like?
It's a 02 Ford Windstar van, so I'm not sure.
So I'm wondering if they could turn it into something unique for the school. Like, I don't know, a food truck corner or something.
And this was used by Food Service Department to transport food between the,
I mean, I hate,
The sites.
you're saying it's worth nothing. So why not give it to the automotive department?
Well,
one
I
of
was,
the
yeah, I was
automotive
wondering,
departments?
maybe the automotive
Yeah.
classes could use it potentially as a vehicle to work on or something. It'd be worth asking them.
Yeah. Turn it into a food truck that's stationary in the school.
and those are all of my items.
I have a question about the Microsoft, if you don't mind. So the Microsoft, if the parent were interested, where would they go on the website to access the link to
Good question.
download it and to go through? How would that work for parents who are listening right now?
Good question. So when the student or our student logs into their Microsoft account, there in the upper right-hand corner, there's a download button. So the student just logs in, and through our Canvas and our ClassLink, which is our single sign-on, and when they log into Microsoft, there's a download, and it'll just put it on the computer that they're on. So it's through the student's portal.
What about the parent?
That's how they do it. The student logs in and then puts it on whatever computer. So if
Oh, I
mom
see what
wants
you're
it on,
saying. I see what you're saying.
then student logs in and hits download, and it's on mom's computer
Got
or
it.
aunt's computer.
I understand. I see what you're saying now.
Thank you.
Okay,
Good.
thank you.
Good afternoon again, through the chair. I have several items that I was able to review with you in individual board briefings. The first one is the approval of the Treasure Coast Technical College calendar for 25-26. The next one is also coming to us from Treasure Coast Technical College. We're very excited about this one. This is approval of some new HVAC training equipment. We did receive a grant for this, so this is at no cost to the district. We are excited to recommend this to the board because I know you all took a tour of TCTC and you saw the equipment they were using, so this will be an upgrade to their current work. My next item is the approval of the renewal of iReady. We're asking for the 25-26 school year. This does support our students in kindergarten through 8th grade in both ELA and math. My next item is the approval of Imagine Learning. This is also a renewal. Imagine Learning provides us opportunities for credit recovery for our students. We are obligated to provide them with curriculum for credit recovery. And so we've done an extensive search of the companies out there that provide this support. This is one that we feel is still the right one for our students in our county. And my last item is the approval of the Comprehensive Evidence-Based Reading Plan, the CERP as we call it. This must be approved by our school board and then submitted to the Department of Education by August 1st. In our CERT plan, this is a DOE template, so we go through essentially and fill out the template. There are some remaining components that you will have filled out by the time this comes to you at the board meeting, and that is really around the data, the real-time data that we have been collecting. So those updates will happen by the end of this week, and we're just asking for you to consider this and give us your blessing on it.
Yes.
Just going back to the iReady, Ms. Basura,
Yes, ma'am.
can you explain a little bit how the toolbox works, how it helps our students, our teachers, even our parents?
So iReady really helps us in a multitude of ways, one of which is the toolbox. But first and foremost, our students take 3 diagnostics throughout the year. The first 2 continually adjust their path, so it's an individualized learning path. So that's the first way. What also comes out of that is a very prescriptive set of skills that our students can do, and also a very prescriptive set of skills that our students need support with. And that's where not only does their individualized learning path help, but so does the toolbox, because it will directly link to things that are relevant in real time and supportive differentiating their instruction.
I remember the toolbox, and this could probably also be used when you see that, and we talked about this earlier, a student needs help right away on certain things. And I remember a little bit about that, so that's good, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Guy?
That's a key component of the data analytics that you do too, the iReady testing, correct?
It definitely
Yeah,
is.
that's probably one of the bigger components.
Correct.
That concludes my items. The next is facilitated by you, and then the next item is legislative priorities, which Dr. Shafter will provide an update and facilitate board conversation.
Right, okay. So discussion item A is advocacy committee member and alternate. So I represented the SDIRC on this committee this year. FSBA is asking for us to select a committee member along with an alternate. The term is from July 1st, 2025 to June 30th, 2026. FSBA will then be appointing its legislative and federal subcommittee members by September 1st. The roles and responsibilities include participating on this committee with statewide representation, 1 representative from each school district, interaction with policymakers and stakeholders to promote public education, the opportunity to be considered to serve on the legislative or federal subcommittees, and monthly meetings and additional meetings for subcommittees, which we had, advocacy and communication leadership, and reporting advocacy efforts back to our respective boards. The one thing I will say in there is the opportunity to be considered to serve on the legislative or federal subcommittees. I did serve on the legislative subcommittee. I was the chair of it this year. So this will be an action item on June 16th business meeting, and the new registration form will be available on their website at that time for submission. Any discussion on that? We're just going to vote on it in June.
Wait, Mr. Dyer has.
Yes.
This is an area that you have particular expertise in, correct?
I don't know if it's expertise, but I'm
Certainly
well-versed
knowledge.
in the legislative
Right, yeah, okay.
stuff that's going on, yes.
I served on advocacy 1 year. It was a great, great committee. And then when I was on state and federal legislative platforms, you really see what's going on and what the needs are. So it's a good committee.
I think with our discussion we had in the last workshop about how we want to advocate for our innovative things, I think that's the real interesting thing to push for. And just to let you all know, I did meet with Congressman Herodopoulos, so I'm going to send you this. And he was here visiting the district last week. We had a really great, I thought it was a great discussion. And we were able to bring up a couple of our unique, innovative requests and concerns, along with our potential platform. But he wanted it in the worst way, but Dr. Shafty will not give it to him because we have not voted on it yet. We did discuss a couple of things, about what our last workshop was. And that was, hey, we're a top-performing district. Loosen up the purse strings a little and let us be flexible with our spending. And he was really appreciative of that. And he said, of course, that's state spending, but we talked about federal programs and things like that, and where the purse strings are kind of tight there too. And he said he would help us with whatever he could do for that federally. Yes.
I talked with Dr. Moore a little bit about this today, you know, depending on when we get our scores and everything. I think that's just something we need to hit hard as far as, hey, we're the template, we're doing this. We're going to still continue to be creative. We have a board that supports, you know, our mission here, so I think that's important to get a hold of. I was not able to be at that meeting, but to talk to him. Thank you for doing that.
Well, you couldn't be
I
because we were
know.
discussing
I know.
things that we don't
I'm sorry, they
vote
told
on.
me I couldn't come.
Right. You can only have one board meeting and an unannounced board member in an unannounced meeting. But it was, he was very excited about our board and everything that we've been doing and moving this district forward and everything that Dr. Moore's been doing with his team and moving forward. And he's very supportive, very positive, and he wants to help us. And I got that feeling very much so. Anything you want to add to that, Dr. Shafty, because you were there, and also Dr. Jacobs? No, and Kelly, anything? You all were in the room, Beth. Bruce?
Too bad he's not at the state level.
Yes, I
Yeah.
know.
No, just, it was a good discussion around some of the federal dollars that are there and just how those, if they shifted, how it wouldn't really have an impact to us as long as the dollars come through, where they come from. They're already rerouted as a subrecipient to the state anyway, so as long as the dollars are there, who they come from doesn't have an impact to us.
And one of the discussions we had is about the DOE and federal department and how it's being shifted around and changed. And we said, you know, basically eliminating some of the bureaucracy for us to be able to get the funds is what the goal is, and I think that's going to be positive for us. So we were really happy about some of the things that were happening there. Okay. Along with that, just to give you an idea before we get to legislative priorities, tomorrow starts the budgeting process up in Tallahassee, which is always, I don't know, this year more entertaining than other years, but just to give you an idea, if you want to watch it, you can go online on, go through the committees on the, either the House or the Senate side. And the way the budget committees work is they don't publish their meeting until about an hour beforehand. Then they'll publish when it is and the agenda. And it's not really so much the agenda, it's the budget, and they'll go line item by line item, and if they agree, they gray it out. If they don't agree, then it goes white. Then they, after they, and it's a Senate and House side together for each committee. So for example, education committees come together and they agree line item by line item. Anything that they don't agree on, they leave for an hour, they come back, they try again, and then after that, it gets pushed up to leadership for the committees, and then if that doesn't happen, it gets pushed up to leadership on the House and the Senate side. So this is the start. It'll be tomorrow through the rest of the week. So that's what's happening in Tallahassee, okay? All right, so we are to prioritization of the legislative priorities. Dr. Shafty, do you want to talk about the priorities that you put out there for us?
Sure, thank you. Through the chair, yesterday, I believe Dr. Moore emailed the board members. We went through a pretty fast process, briefing each of you individually, receiving feedback, and then connecting with Rutledge Yesenia and our lobbyists to ensure that how the priorities were organized made sense to all and really reflected the sport at large. I will talk you through some of the feedback we received and how this document may look a little bit different than the previous version. At the top of the document where we have ongoing commitment, we received feedback to really be intentional, and the fifth line, we added student mental wellness along with school safety. That was some feedback we received. And then towards the bottom half of the document, we kept the alignment to the strategic plan and that innovation community leadership levers. Something we learned from our local lobbyist and representative is we switched out the word before in blue. That bucket really was anchored in flexibility. There was a Senate Bill 166 that received quite a bit of traction, and her recommendation was to shift flexibility to efficiency. That is the statewide language that's used. So that title now shows efficiency in regulations as an academically high-performing district. We restated the criteria for an academically high-performing district. The first bullet, the addition is categorical and capital budget lines, asking for that efficiency through use of those. The second bullet stayed the same, and what you'll notice is at the end of each of the bullets, we have the citation, which once the board approves it, we will link the specific place in the statute that we are advocating for a change. The third bullet includes, again, that link to Senate Bill 166. Our lobbyists really felt like we would receive that return in some form next year, and this would help us stay future-focused and forward-driven with that, and that is shifting the oversight of our voluntary pre-kindergarten programs from early learning coalitions to the school district. Those were the major changes to the text in blue, or that first bucket of efficiency. The second bucket focuses on agility, still anchored in being a high-performing district. We are asking, what we heard the board ask for was the same flexibility afforded to charter schools. We believe our track record is proven, and all we're asking for is that same level of flexibility and autonomy for us to act as quickly as we have in the past. The first bullet, a recommendation was made to define what innovation is when we think about our instructional models. So added in parentheses, our specific approaches to innovation will be the classical education, our K-8 pathways, CTE was feedback we received, as well as the boutique secondary school. Flexibility with the instructional model is linked to the rule there. The second bullet is greater autonomy. We received feedback that bullet was a little bit wordy, so we are asking for autonomy in curriculum selection, design, and the programming referenced in the bullet before. And the last bullet incorporates the appropriations requests that we made through the Senate and the House this year to really anchor it in the priorities, so there's consistency for appropriations funding for that boutique school configuration that we are offering. So that is walking you through your new priorities based on feedback, and through the chair, I will allow you to facilitate any changes or feedback based on this new version of the document.
Yeah, before board members speak, I just want to say thank you for putting in the, in parentheses, the bill, because you noticed when we were up in Tallahassee that on our platform this last year, I've done it every year when I go up there, I look at our platform and I try to find which bill that fits in with, and then I talk about that bill and how this would fit in with the bill. So I appreciate you doing that, because that's a lot easier.
I have to extend the gratitude to Dr. Moore, because that was his idea.
Yeah. And I've been doing that for the last couple of years, but it's a lot easier when it's written right on there, because I write it on there for the representative. But it's a lot nicer for them to have it written there, so we appreciate that. Okay, board members, anything that you want to talk about on this? Mr. Dyer.
Yeah, I think this is really so much better, because it talks about things that really are not going to cost the legislature any money at all, but gives us the flexibility to really do what's needed to continue to drive our success. So much, much better, and I'm sure that all the other issues that are financial are going to be carried by the Small District Consortium and carried by the FSBA, and so, I mean, it's just, there's other things to carry that, but this really is now specific to us and what we're trying to do to move things forward. So I think it was a great discussion last time, and I really like the outcome. My question, though, I guess, is to the chair and to the other board members, how do we make sure that this message, there is so much that's being thrown at the legislature, how do we get this message to resonate with those in the legislature that can actually make something happen? Who's going to carry the water for us in this? How can we get the other, I think there are 10 other high-performing districts we found out? How can we get the other 10 high-performing districts to buy into this? And if we could go in to the legislature with all 10 of these districts all across the state, we all believe this. I mean, I think that would be powerful if somehow we could meet with maybe the superintendents of all 10 of those districts, go to Tallahassee and actually present what you need.
I think there's one thing, when Dr. Shafty was meeting with our, what are they? No, not the congressman. Rutledge Yesenia, as they were working through this
Our lobbying
particular-
firm.
Our lobbying firm, thank you. I was trying to say their name and trying to give them some credit here. That this is a model for other districts to follow. That this alignment is the desire that she had for other districts to follow this versus the generic, everyone's advocating
Right.
for things in which will never get done.
All right.
The second is twofold, to use Rutledge Yesenia to connect with the lobbyists of those other 9 districts, as well as me connecting and engaging with those particular districts. Now, those districts do change every year based on academic outcomes, free audits, and meeting class size. So we know this year our audit was clean, we know we met class size last year, and we know we're going to be an A, so we will be a high-performing school district next year. But we can continue to advocate, and I think it's a fair balance, because you have to earn something, be it high-achieving school district, in order to receive the flexibility versus just giving it. So we'll do that legwork, both working with Rutledge Yesenia, and I'll work with the other superintendents once that list is available.
The other point that you made was, you asked what school board members can do, and we can, and once we know those other 9 districts, we can also talk to other board members in those districts to say, hey, make sure that we're working together on this and sending the same message. So that's important too. I've done that with a couple other different bills that we had on our platform this last year. I contacted a couple of school board members and went up to them at a conference. I'm going to the summer conference next week. And so I can't talk about the platform because we won't have voted on it yet. But I will talk about, are you a high-performing district, and if so, what are your needs?
Can you talk about the draft platform? Subject to vote?
I think
I
we
would
could just
assume
talk
so.
about in generalities,
Well,
the
it's a draft.
fact that we're
If we
looking
put draft
at.
on it, can't you
Yeah.
talk about it as a draft, subject to board approval?
Yeah, I could.
And then you can talk about it
'Cause we've
specifically
noticed it.
rather than generally.
Yeah, we've noticed it, so you're right.
Just write
Okay.
draft on it, yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else? Ms. Rosario?
So, thank you for the changes. I'm glad that we were able to have some of the wording changed from the original document. I do have some suggestions, questions, concerns. The legislative priorities should typically start with the goal or target. The first in the blue, under efficiencies in regulations, that first sentence that begins with "the district has demonstrated consistent excellence," that sentence is completely true. I'm not sure that we want to start there. It doesn't sound like that's a goal for us. What we're saying is we've already attained this excellence. We've already attained financial stewardship. We've already attained governance. So we're good. But then we're giving them an ask. So I would just suggest removing that first sentence and just begin with the goal. What's the goal? The goal is to further elevate outcomes, or to elevate outcomes and advance innovation. Like, that would be the goal in that section.
Board members, do you agree with that? Yes.
I do not. I think that's something that we should talk about because of the consistent excellence of student achievement. And sure, they probably know it, they look at our scores, but I think that's powerful to keep that statement before you list the bullets. That's my opinion on that one. I think it's powerful.
I would suggest just putting it in the above paragraph. Because here you're actually asking them, what is the ask? The ask doesn't begin with, we are an excellent school district. The ask is to elevate outcomes and advance innovation. That's the ask. That's where I think it should begin. So put that first, my suggestion is to put that first sentence in the above to capture the audience as they're reading, to capture the person who is reading it, to say, I get it. I get what you're asking for. Like if you look at what's in purple, in expand, the first ask is to support legislation. There is a goal and a target there for the purpose of, and then of course it just says what the ask is. That's what I'm suggesting. The other thing that I have a question about is the second bullet.
Can you hold on a second? Can we get kind of everyone on the same page? Does everyone agree that it needs to be changed, or do you want to keep it the same way?
I see the
We're looking
point, but
at
I don't
this.
have a problem with it the way it is. I think it could work either way. I'm just trying to.
I'm fine with it saying like it is, because it makes a statement that, hey, we're high performing, and here's our ask. I'm fine with that. Dr. Posca?
I mean, I think you could do it either way, and both would be good. I don't know that it needs to be changed. I think this final product looks pretty good, though.
I do too. I don't think we should pick it apart. But. Ms.
All right,
Rosario?
the next bullet is the second bullet, allow, and I didn't understand what this was asking. Allow for a period that is shorter than the current 90 calendar day period to take actions when there are 10 unexcused absences or absences that the reasons are unknown.
There should be, through the chair, there should be allow for a period, and this is an additive piece to this year's attendance bill that would allow us the ability to connect with families that much sooner on a consistent basis when absenteeism is an issue.
So what are we asking? What is the ask? What is the request of our legislators with this bullet?
To add that language.
What are we saying to them? What is it that they can take away with as a legislator to say, I know what I can do on my end to help this district with this particular bullet? What is it? Because I don't get it. Are we asking them to extend our calendar year?
Dr. Shafty, can you refer to the language of the bill that's right now and what we'd like to do, what the ask is to change that language
I could do
maybe,
that.
or alter the language?
It was in the Senate bill that lost traction, 166. So this, with the addition of the A, that's my error, I missed that. That bullet is the exact language that was in that Senate bill.
I'm still not understanding. So allow for a period that is shorter than the current. What does that mean? A period shorter than the current 90-day calendar period?
90 days is the current.
Semester.
So 85, 70, 60.
So
What are we asking?
We can't intervene.
Is it a
60 days, 70
semester?
days, what is it? Yeah, I think
What
that's a
calendar,
good question.
what 90-day calendar period are we talking about? Are we talking about the instructional? Are we talking about the calendar, the entire calendar year? I'm still not understanding what the ask is.
So any 90 days on a calendar, when there are 10 unexcused absences, this is the unknown piece of it. Sometimes we call in and the absence is unknown. Right now, we have to go longer and show time over time that beyond 90 days, we've made this attempt and this attempt and this attempt. This would allow the board, if they wish to pursue it, flexibility for us to connect with families within the 90-day period as opposed to waiting until the absences span, the 10 unexcused absences span beyond that.
Can we just word it that way? 'Cause
So
it just
maybe-
It's just the wording, it's like what, I don't understand what is it.
So if you're looking for a time, a date, number of days specific, maybe 45 days would be, that's aligned to a 9-week period. It just allows, there's no teeth in anything we do until we hit the 10 within 90 days. So basically, we have to wait a half a school year
Right.
in order to get them in truancy court.
So
you're
that
saying-
should be the ask.
I will say this, hold on one second. That bill that you said didn't get any traction, that piece was looking at possibly going into the other train bill. So this might not be anything we need to include at all when we watch what happens with that train bill. What was it, I gave you the numbers, I can't remember last time. 1105. So if it gets put in with 1105 and it passes, then we don't even need this bullet,
Okay.
okay? If it doesn't pass, then we do need to put that in there, that we supported that bill that didn't pass, basically. Everybody was excited about it because we felt like that was going to help you communicate with parents quicker than waiting for that many days for a child to get back in school.
So I think that the ask would just be to communicate with parents within the 45-day window of an absence, not, I just think all of that, it's too complicated. It's, for a simpleton to understand, that's a little bit too complicated because I'm not quite sure what is it that we're wanting them to do.
Did you take this from the language of the
I
bill that
knew
was
it,
being
yeah.
presented? Thank you.
Yes. I remember that.
And sometimes the wording of a bill
Yeah.
doesn't sound simple to us.
Right.
But it's lawyerese, I'm sorry, but it's lawyerese that makes it a little more complicated. And it was taken right from that bill, because when I read it, I thought, oh, that's where she got it from.
And Dr. Ward, do you think they did 90-day because of semester? I mean, why did they choose 90? I mean, in your opinion?
Good idea for me to say. But more than likely because of a semester.
Yeah, that's what I
and
thought, yeah.
Whenever they did do this, it probably took that long for students to accumulate the 10 unexcused, where now we're literally seeing it within the first 45 days.
Yeah, and that's something, I mean, what do we want? We want our students in school, so how do we work with that in our parents? I mean, they could still look at focus, they could still, I mean, are those letters going out anymore as far as, okay, so we're trying to do this, but we still need to improve in our attendance, so how do we stick with that with the law, I guess?
I have a suggestion, if that's okay. When you put the A before the period, maybe in parentheses, after the 90-day calendar period, put possibly 45 days as a suggestion. Because lawmakers do want to know what the suggestion is from the people that are actually doing the work. Yes,
Well, you could also add a sentence, this will allow us to communicate with parents earlier.
yes.
And add the sentence, after keep what you got with the bill, I would sure put an A period in there, but then maybe parentheses 45, as you said. And then this will allow us to communicate with parents earlier,
Yes.
something like
Ms.
that.
John, or Dr. Jones?
And when we talked about this in our time with the cabinet and superintendent, we're just looking to bring parents in to say, listen, these are the absences, we've got to do a better job. Bringing our parents in to make them also accountable instead of having excused absence every week. I mean, as a high school principal, you know, a parent called in, that was it, nothing, you know, so this just gives us more accountability because we need our students in school.
Ms.
Through the
Rosario?
chair, sorry. Since you're decreasing from 90 to 45, would you like to decrease from 10 to 5 absences?
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, because basically we want to track the same problem sooner. We want earlier intervention. So I would do, yeah.
I agree. And sometimes the parent doesn't know. You know, let's talk about skipping school, you know? I think it'd be helpful for the parent to know that their child's not in school, because sometimes they don't know. Yes.
I think there is, I'm trying to remember now, I really think that we should go back to the table on this one because is it unexcused consecutive? That makes a big difference. Is it 10 unexcused consecutive or is it 10 unexcused in general? And then is the 45-day period any time throughout the school year or only at the beginning of the school year? So I think this needs to just be fleshed out a little bit more. Also, the 10 unexcused absences or absences that are reasons, that the reasons are unknown, aren't those the same?
Not necessarily.
Why?
I would think if a family moves and the absences start to accumulate, I wouldn't classify those as unexcused. Those are unknown reasons why the student is not attending school and they haven't re-enrolled in a new location.
So
Right.
for less wording, can you just say 10 or whatever, 10 unexcused or unknown absences?
I'll defer to the chair and the board how they.
I'm
like to
fine with
handle it.
that, but I really think this long discussion
Just
is
seems
going to be
too
mute
wordy.
because I think it's going to be put into that other bill. So I think, you know, let's look at that bill and see what happens before you bring this to us for the vote.
Yeah, I'm not. if it were to remain, it needs to be fleshed out a little more. It just seems
It
too
It just
complicated.
appears to me, if that's what the bill says, that we ought to make it what the bill says and then add a qualifying sentence after it, if we want to do that. But at least leave it to where the legislature will understand what we're talking about is referred to a bill that they've seen previously.
And
then
I will
qualify.
tell you, when you're bringing up a legislative platform and you see that you're referring to a bill that didn't pass the year before, it's a lot easier when you have the same bill language, because you can
Yes,
say,
I get
hey, this
that.
bill was there last year, it didn't get enough votes, and here's why we think it didn't. And we think, maybe this is why you might want to think about voting for it this year. And then we go to the people that didn't vote for it and say, is there a reason why you didn't vote for this? So that does help.
You said, are we talking about the Bill 166?
The bill is going to be possibly put into 1105, and that's a train bill that's going to be possibly voted on by the end of the week. We'll see. I don't know.
But 166 died. What did you?
Yes.
Yeah.
But the language in the bills, even if the bill dies, the language in the bills can still be put into another bill. And then that's called a train bill, because it's taking language from other bills and attaching it like another car on a train. That's why they do that.
So if it died, why are we including that in our legislative platform?
Through the chair, after speaking with our lobbyist, it was a timing issue, which is why
Oh, okay.
she felt this didn't make it and saw really great promise for it to come back next year in a very similar version.
That's why I say, I think it might even show up in 1105, because I think there was enough support for it that it was timing issue as far as it didn't get to enough committees before it could go to the floor. Sometimes that happens with bills, especially when you have a lot of bills at the end of the year.
That wasn't what I,
Madam,
What? All right, moving on? Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
I think we've beat this issue to
Yes.
death, and maybe there's another point in this that we could look at, but in my opinion, yeah.
Okay? Yep. Are we good with this? All right, thank you for presenting it. Thank you for rewording it the way you did, and I think it looks great, as far as a visual, too.
Yes.
That would be very nice to be able to hand to somebody versus a plain white piece of paper that has a bunch of, well, two pieces of paper and a bunch of words on them. So I think this is the best way to do it. All right, with that, I'd like to adjourn this workshop. The time is 1:37.